Week 4 of the 2021 college football season is now over. And today I'll be giving you guys my updated rankings for Week 5 of this 2021 season. And Week 4, to say the least, was an insane week of college football. We saw several major upsets, and we're starting to see which teams are the big surprise teams of this 2021 season. And by the way, these surprise teams definitely can be some college football playoff contenders in this 2021 season. So it's been an insane season so far. And honestly, looking back to September, I can't recall a more insane September than we just saw. The most recent year that comes to date is 2007, which that's going to be pretty tough to beat if you've seen how insane of a 2007 season there was that year. But 2021, it's been a close second so far, and I think we're bound for an insane October as well. So that being said, I'll be giving you guys my Week 5 rankings here today. We'll be getting started with 1 through 7, and the first thing that probably will catch your eye in this top 7 is look who's at number 7, Arkansas. They beat Texas A&M 20-10 this past weekend, and Arkansas is jumping up 13 positions in my rankings from last week. They're 4-0, and that team is for real. Razorbacks, I had a couple of questions about them heading into that Texas A&M game, and honestly, I told some of you guys in the comment sections, if Arkansas beats Texas A&M, you'll see them in the top 10, and they are in the top 10, in fact, in the top 7, and Arkansas, this is a team that, they looked very good. I watched most of that game, Texas A&M and Arkansas, and Razorbacks, they looked very good throughout that entire thing, and they have definitely been the big surprise team, in my opinion, so far this season. Iowa's looked great. They've been a surprise. Penn State, you could say, has also been a bit of a surprise. Oregon as well. Don't forget about them. But Arkansas in particular really has shocked me so far this season. If you watch my predictions, if you're an Arkansas fan, I apologize because I thought Arkansas would have a tough time even getting up to 7 wins. But right now, they've been looking, outstanding to say the least. Alabama's number 1, though. They beat Southern Miss 63-14, had no problems there. Georgia shut out Vanderbilt 62-0. I think it was 35-0 at the end of the first quarter, if I'm remembering that correctly. But Alabama and Georgia, clearly the top 2 teams right now. Georgia could be number 1 as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia and Alabama played each other in the SEC championship game. Oregon's number 3. They beat Arizona last night 41-19. They're 4-0. They're staying up at number 3. Penn State jumps up to number 4 after their win against Villanova. They're still undefeated as well. Iowa sticks around at number 5. They kind of had a scary game there against Colorado State. 24-14 was the final score. Colorado State, by the way, they just lost to FCS South Dakota State by like 20, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So Iowa, they just did not look very good in that matchup. There were a ton of mental errors, a ton of big mistakes, which made that game way closer than it should have been. So Iowa, I'm going to keep them at number 5, but they got to play a lot better than that if you're going to be going up against Alabama in the college football playoff here in a couple of months. Cincinnati's number 6. They're jumping up 1 position. They had a bye week, and Cincinnati, they've got a huge moment to prove themselves this next weekend against Notre Dame. If Cincinnati beats Notre Dame, you may just see Cincinnati in my top 4. Bearcats deserve it if they can get a big win over Notre Dame here this weekend. Arkansas, once again, number 7. They're jumping up from 20-7 after last week's win over Texas A&M. On to 8 through 14. Oklahoma comes in at number 8, and now I've started to fall back on Oklahoma a little bit. Oklahoma was in my top 4 still last week, but after their 3-point win over West Virginia at 16-13, I've got a couple of questions about this Sooner team. They've played close games against Tulane, Nebraska, and now West Virginia, all 3 of which West Virginia is good. Nebraska has shown potential, but Oklahoma, they should be blowing out these teams if they're a top 4 team right now. So I am dropping the Sooners 4 positions, but I'm still keeping them in the top 10. I think until Oklahoma takes a loss, they should remain in the top 10. It would just be unreasonable to drop them out of the top 10 just because they haven't played. A win's a win, but obviously some wins look better than others. But Oklahoma, they're still staying in my top 8. Florida beat Tennessee 38-14. They are 3-1, and overall, that was a good win for Florida. Looked kind of close there at first. Tennessee, I think, had the lead there for a little while, but Florida Gators still looking like a pretty talented football team after beating Tennessee. Ohio State beat Akron 59-7. Kind of a slow start to that game as well, but Ohio State still got the win. That's all that matters. Notre Dame, they beat Wisconsin 41-13, and that game, by the way, was way closer than the score shows. That was a very low-scoring, tight matchup for a long time. Obviously, Notre Dame, in the last few minutes, Graham Mertz threw a couple of picks. and Notre Dame really capitalized on that game. But overall, I mean, solid performance by Notre Dame, but I'm not completely sold on Notre Dame yet. I mean, they had close games against Toledo, Purdue, etc. So Notre Dame, they're going to stay out of the top 10 right now, but that team definitely shows potential. Ole Miss is number 12. They stay at the same position during their bye week at 3-0. Michigan was 13, or is 13. They beat Rutgers 20-13. They're moving up 2 positions after last week. I mean, some would say that was a questionable game, but Rutgers is a good team this year, actually. I would not be surprised to see them get up to 6 to 7 wins. Scarlet Knights are actually probably having, I'd say, a bull season coming up here in 2021. They played pretty well against Michigan, and overall Wolverines are still looking pretty good. Michigan State, questionable winning against Nebraska last night. As many of you guys may know, I am a Nebraska fan, and I watched pretty much that entire game. And my takeaways, Nebraska, they should have won that game. Michigan State did not get a single first down in that second half and went into overtime. Michigan State capitalized on a couple of the big Nebraska mistakes, and the Spartans got the win. Spartans, I believe, are an outstanding team. Kenneth Walker is probably the best running back in the nation right now. But Michigan State, that's a team that's got to play a lot better offensively if they're going to be a really good bowl team this season, which I think Michigan State is definitely one of the better teams in the Big Ten right now. But the way that they played last night against Nebraska, that offense just did not look very good. Defensively, they played okay, especially along the defensive line. In the secondary, Michigan State did not look so good last night, but I mean, Michigan State, that's still a very good team. I like that team actually quite a bit still, so I'm keeping them in the top 15. But offensively, got to be better if you're going to be a good team this season, but they're 4-0. On to 15 through 21. BYU comes in at 15. They jump up 2 positions after their win over South Florida. 35-27 was the final score there. Overall, not a bad win, but South Florida, you should have beat them by more if you're going to be a top 15 team, but I'm going to let it slide. BYU gets up to 15. Texas A&M drops off 7 positions after their loss against Arkansas, 10-20, which the Aggies, I've been kind of conservative with my rankings. If you guys have been following me, I mean, I've had them outside of the top 10, and I don't think I've had them any higher than number 7, I think, in this season, just because, I mean, I've had a couple of questions about their offense. The quarterback situation's kind of complicated right now. And Texas A&M, they're still a good football team, but Arkansas, I mean, they're clearly better right now. So Texas A&M, they're going to drop down to 16, but still, I think they're worthy of being a top 20 team. Oklahoma State enters the rankings this week at 17. They beat K-State 31-20, solid win there. Oklahoma State's also a team that I've kind of questioned a bit so far this season. Are they real? Are they not? But overall, after that win against K-State, they also beat Boise State on the road that was actually last week. I mean, Oklahoma State's looking pretty good right now. I think they're definitely deserving of a top 20 position right now, as they're also at 4-0. But the first couple of weeks, Oklahoma State did not look too good. I think they had a close game against an FCS team, and they also played it close against Tulsa. So Oklahoma State did have a couple of questionable outcomes there, but that is still a good football team for sure. Coastal Carolina, they beat UMass 53-3. I understand UMass is a pretty terrible team, but overall, solid win. They're moving up 4 positions after last week. UCLA moves from 25 to 19 after last week's win over Stanford on the road. 35-24 was the final score there. Auburn, that was a questionable game against Georgia State. I mean, it was 34-24. They got the win by 10, but Georgia State, they kept it very close for a long time in that game. And Auburn, they got to be a lot better than that. I mean, I understand they're coming off of a tough loss against Penn State, but I mean, you got to beat these easy teams like Georgia State. And that was almost a tragic loss for Auburn. I mean, I think Georgia State was up by 12 at one point in that game. So Auburn, they're moving up 1 right now just because of a few teams that are falling out. Once again, we saw a ton of upsets in this week. But if we didn't see many upsets in week 4, you better believe Auburn would probably be around 24-25 right now. Baylor, they beat Iowa State 31-29. Big upset win. Baylor's looking pretty good. They've also been a surprise team so far. They're 4-0. And Iowa State has struggled, surprisingly. I mean, once again, we've seen some very surprising events so far this season. Like, I thought Iowa State would be great. They have not looked so good, and that's heavily on the offense. The offense has not looked anywhere near as good as many analysts thought, which Iowa State is. That's still a good football team, but they have not looked very good. So, yeah, Baylor comes up to number 21. They enter the rankings this week. Now, for 22 through 25, we got Wake Forest at 22. NC State at 23, and Clemson at 24. So we got 3 ACC teams here in the 22 through 24 range. Wake Forest is the top-ranked ACC team in my rankings right now. I think in the AP poll, it's NC State. NC State's ranked 23rd in the AP poll. I believe Wake Forest is 24, if I'm correct. But Wake Forest, they've looked pretty good so far. Solid win over Virginia on the road last week, 37-17. They're not looking too bad. They're 4-0. NC State, they beat Clemson 27-21, obviously in overtime. Huge upset win. Reason why I've got Wake Forest over NC State is because NC State, they took a loss so far this season. They lost to, I think it was Mississippi State, if I'm correct. So yeah, NC State, they're 3-0 right, or 3-1 right now. They did take a loss. Wake Forest is still undefeated. I think Wake Forest deserves the position right now over NC State. Obviously, NC State's got a more quality win against Clemson, but still, you've taken a loss. Clemson, on the flip side, they lost to NC State, obviously. They're dropping down 16 positions. That's the furthest I've ever dropped a team in my rankings before. Main reason being Clemson, I mean, they're 2-2. They lost to Georgia in week 1, and that's their second loss. And I don't think a 2-loss ACC team should be in the top 20 right now. I mean, you could make an argument they shouldn't even be in the top 25 right now. I mean, 2 losses and you're an ACC team. The ACC has looked absolutely horrible so far this 2021 season. So Clemson barely staying in the rankings, but that's a team that really needs to prove themselves at this point in the season. I mean, DJ Uiagalelei, he's looked all right, but he is nothing like Trevor Lawrence if we've learned anything so far in this 2021 season. Maryland, they're going to be in the rankings at 25. They beat Kent State 37-16. I think a lot of people are underestimating Maryland, actually. That's a team that's kind of a dark horse in the Big Ten, but they're looking pretty good. They're 4-0. Not a bad football team there. First 5 out, Texas, Kentucky, Fresno State. Those 3 in particular definitely could be ranked right now. I mean, Texas had a huge win over Texas Tech. I mean, that was an incredible win for Texas. Kentucky's looked pretty good. I mean, I'm not going to rank them, but Kentucky, I mean, they of course had that close game against South Carolina. They're undefeated, but Kentucky, I still have a couple of questions about them. Fresno State, that team seems kind of underrated to me right now. They had a close game against UNLV, and I don't think a team that just beat UNLV by 8 should be above any of those 3 ACC teams or Maryland right now. Fresno State, I mean, they're a good football team, but they're one of those group of 5 teams I don't know about them right now. Wisconsin's 29. They lost to Notre Dame, obviously. Graham Mertz, holy. Yeah, he blew that game huge for Wisconsin. That is a shame that happened. I mean, Graham Mertz, 5 turnovers. That is incredible. I mean, you can't turn over the ball 5 times and expect to beat a good Notre Dame team. Like, he threw 4 picks, 1 fumble. Pretty unacceptable. Iowa State's number 30. They lost to Baylor, of course. Pretty unfortunate loss for them as well. And they're number 30. Dropped out of the rankings. Iowa State was 13. They've dropped out. Wisconsin was 18. North Carolina was 19. Kansas State was 23. Fresno State was 24. So we dropped 5 teams out of the rankings this past week. Once again, insane week of college football. I mean, we've seen it's been an awesome September. I got to be honest. I mean, this has been quite a college football season so far, seeing fans back in the stands for 1. But for 2, I mean, Clemson probably won't be in the college football playoff now. I mean, I don't expect them to be by any means with a 2-loss record already. And I mean, Ohio State, who knows? They might not be in there. I mean, we could see definitely 2 new teams in the college football playoff, including, I mean, we could see Georgia as well. Alabama, they're still going strong, but yeah, we're seeing some pretty surprising outcomes so far this season. But so yeah, it'll be a fun September. Let me know your thoughts and comments below on these rankings. Obviously, very interesting week 4. And week 5 should be even more fun for sure. So that being said, appreciate you guys all watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you later.